as we are at the last 4 episodes of Star Wars: The Bad Batch. We get to see our favorite clone commandos, maybe our favorite clone commandos. Mine are Delta Squad, but neither here nor there. We get to see the Bad Batch be an expansion in the Star Wars universe. We get to see their characterization, their relationship with Omega, and in this most recent episode, their expansive relationships with the crime syndicates in the underworld of Star Wars. Hello there, everyone. Welcome to All Day the Geek Way. I'm Jet. Hope you're enjoying your day the Geek Way, of course. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about Season 1, Episode 13, Infestation of Star Wars: The Bad Batch. Just letting everyone know, first off, if you enjoy the content and want to see more of it, please subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, give this video a like. It does help with the YouTube algorithm and getting these ideas out over there. As we get into spoiler territory. Now, if you don't want to listen to spoilers or you're not caught up with the Bad Batch, I do recommend that you watch the episode first or get all caught up with the series and then come back to the video, because from this point on, we are getting to spoiler territory. At the beginning of the episode, the Batch comes back from a mission given to them by Sid. Echo mentions Gundarks in an infestation. Gundarks are very popular since Star Wars Episode 2, or maybe it was 3. It's one of the two. But they like to make that joke often, and honestly, it doesn't really go anywhere. I think they expanded on that in the Clone Wars series. I don't remember, to be honest with you. Though it's the squad talking about how Sid, the Trandoshan female, lizard people, essentially, leaves off key details on missions. And as they get back and they go into the bar that they usually get their missions from Sid, they notice there's a whole lot of people there wearing uniforms in particular. And as they go out to see Sid and they try to make it to the back office, they are stopped by one of a guard that is now in the bar. And Hunter just kind of throws him at the wall and barges into a room. And from this point, we are introduced to a new character whose name is Roland. He's a Deveronian. If you don't know what a Deveronian is, they are the devil-looking species in Star Wars. You've probably seen it in Episode 4, just a guy sitting in the Mos Eisley Cantina, just smiling maniacally, that smile. That's a Deveronian. And Roland is the son of crime boss Issa Durand. So they are a well-known syndicate. And he is the one who received the pet named Ruby. Ruby, it's a little lizard dog acting thingy that we saw early on in the series. That was one of their missions, is to retrieve that pet. And it was for Roland, who paid a really good price for Ruby. And at this point, we've learned that Roland has taken over Sid's job, essentially, threw her out. And he has now taken over in her place. Just kind of to show you how the crime syndicates, some of them operate, whether it's just declaring complete dominance on jobs or, in some cases, killing off characters. Thankfully for Sid, she's still alive. She's one of the more charismatic characters in the series that I like. She knows a lot about the crime syndicates, which makes sense considering that she gives jobs that a lot of crime syndicates request, considering also we've seen the Bad Batch retrieve the Rancor. That would be Jabba the Hutt's, and we also saw them retrieve Ruby, as mentioned earlier. Well, from this point, Roland says, hey, if you want a job, you can go to me at any time. And Hunter says, well, think about it, as he leaves the bar. And as they're out and they're going to the spaceport, he says that they need to leave Ord Mantell, which is the planet that they're on. And they don't really have much interest in helping Sid. Until Omega says, like, why don't we help her? In her British accent. And just Omega wanting shit done again. Which has been a little pet peeve on the series of mine. It's just, if the story wants to continue, it's because Omega wants something to happen. I get it. She's the child. She is a child. She's not the child like in The Mandalorian, but she's a child. She is a main focus on the story. I get it. But in terms of plot devices, it seems she's the only one running things forward, or just saying, I want this done, and the Batch goes, okay. Well, it just turns out, as they're talking about Sid is in their spaceship saying, like, hey, at least someone cares about me. Get the hell in the ship. And she gives not the feedback, but gives the information that her cantina was taken over by Roland. And she wants help from the batch to get it back. And thankfully, well, no matter what, Omega wants to help her, but there's more incentive for the batch to help them, especially as she says, like, hey, I've been really good at keeping secrets for you. Like, secrets like the Bad Batch is hiding and getting jobs from her, and hiding that secret from the Empire. So it's kind of important, and Tech catches on, being like, I believe she's threatening us. She says, you catch on really well. I always love her dialogue with Tech in particular, just because she's just like, oh wow, you're really good at pointing out the obvious. Like, duh. The same as usual. Well, the job that she wants to do is stealing spice that is in her back office and sabotaging a deal that Roland has with the Pikes. Now, with the Pikes, we have seen them in the Clone Wars series. Very important to note that they allied with Maul in the siege of Mandalore, along with the Hutts and the Black Sun. And essentially, she says, we're going to the mines, the Ord Mantell mines. We're going to use one of the mine carts. It's going to be silent. We're not going to use the motors. And we're going to break into the back of my office and steal 6 crates of spice that Roland is carrying at that moment in time. And she also mentions, you don't want to make enemies with the Pikes. The Pikes are very powerful, especially in the underground crime syndicates. And this popped a question for me. Like I said, they allied with Maul during the siege of Mandalore. We learned in Solo, when he makes that appearance, that really cringe appearance, to be honest. Maul makes that appearance because he's basically in charge of all the crime syndicates. So I'm wondering if a lot of the Pike's power actually comes from Maul. Maybe this will be explored later in the season. Maybe this will be explored in season 2. I think it's more of a setup for season 2, because even though this episode feels like filler, it tends to be relevant in later times. They did this all the time in the Clone Wars series. Thankfully, I think the Clone Wars was a little bit better episodically in keeping relevance to the story compared to the Bad Batch, but we'll see what happens. So they go to the Ord Mantell mines, and they use the mine carts. They have to use a push crank to make it go, because if they use the motors, it can create a lot of noise, and there's an infestation, hence the name of the episode. Holy crap. Can't believe it. And it's an infestation problem, and as they open the door to go through the nest of what we don't know the creatures are, that sentence didn't make sense, disregard. She said, Sid says, like, be really quiet, and as they hear a little bit of, like, little crackling and little noises, Wrecker's just like, what was that? And he drops his torch into the nest, and you hear a little bit more noises, and Sid's just like, what did I tell you? Come on. They make it through, they get to the office area, and this is where they start their Ocean's 11 heist. And they start to steal all the spice from Sid's office. And they're curious, like, hey, how do you know Roland's not in there? She says, I'll take care of that. And she uses her transponder to talk to the 2 lackeys that are in their cantina all the time. I can't remember the species of the first one. It's the same one as Hondo. I'm blanking at the moment. And then you have also the Ithorian, the little T, the T heads guys. I love Ithorians. I have for a long time, but most of you won't even know what I'm talking about. Well, they are on the comms to distract Roland, and so what they do is they bait Ruby outside, and they capture Ruby, and Roland's like, where's Ruby? The guards are like, we don't know. They're like, go find her, and they're on the search to find her. So they're acting as a distraction while the batch breaks into the office and steals all of the spice. And by the time Roland actually does get Ruby back, they have stolen all the spice. And Roland, you see Roland, he's like petting Ruby, and the door is locked because Echo had locked the door from the inside, and he just shoots the door, and the panel opens, and the spice is gone. And we also later see there's a little chase that starts to happen where some of the guards for Roland get on the minecarts and they turn on the engine while the batch is using the cranks to escape. So it's been a plot device earlier that we know there's a lot of noises. It's going to cause problems, and it's going to be foreshadowing the problem that will come within the third act of the episode. And at the same time, like during that chase, he's basically interrogating those two lackey dudes and being like, what's her plan? They're like, we don't know. We were just here to distract. And the Pikes come in. But before that, talking about the chase, Roland's crew just gets wrecked. By Wrecker, too. So that makes sense. And they turn on the motors, and they're able to... I think Hunter is able to jump on one of the carts, just basically knocks out the guys, makes the cart go in reverse. They crash into each other, and the mine carts fall. There's still some other of his lackeys that are chasing after him. And this is when the hive starts to manifest, and they start flying out. One part of the hive attacks Roland's crew. As for the batch, Tech says, like, oh yeah, these guys hate light, so use your torches on them. And they keep like running away. They shoot some of them, and eventually they make it past the door, and Wrecker closes the door on the infestation. However, during that process, all 6 of the spice containers fell into the nest. So that's an issue that we're going to see a little bit later. Well, okay, going back to the Pikes. The Pikes come in and they talk to Roland saying like, hey, where the hell's our spice? And Roland says like, it was stolen. Now, with the Pikes in particular, instantly I heard the voice of one of the Pikes and knew that it was the voice of Liam O'Brien. He is one of my favorite voice actors of all time. He did the voice of War in Darksiders. He did the Red Skull in Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. He's very talented, and I think he's extremely underrated. Like, when people think of American voice actors, they'll think of like Steve Blum or people like him. And Liam O'Brien, like, every time he does something, he just executes every line well, even if it's for like super minor characters such as the Pikes. Well, basically the Pikes say, hey, you need to correct this mistake. Like, you don't really have a choice, Roland. You've got to correct it. And this kind of shows like the power of the Pikes. They're way more powerful than Roland. Roland is just the son of a crime lord, basically trying to make his name well known. But the Pikes are just like, hey, we've been established, and you've known us since the Clone Wars. We are not screwing around. You need to get this back. Well, a scene later, Sid and the Bad Batch go back into the bar, and Sid's talking about like, yeah, you don't know the power of the Pikes. Like, they're very powerful. And as they walk into the bar, they see a bunch of bodies that the Pikes just littered, and it's all of Roland's crew. Well, the Pikes and Roland make an appearance, and Roland says like, yeah, those are the guys that stole the shipment. And they try to like play it off. Excuse me. They try to play it off, and the Pikes say like, just kill all of them. Like, I don't have any patience. And this is when Hunter has to step in and be like, hey, we lost the shipment. We'll get it back. And just so that they stay true to their word, instantly the Pikes say like, well, the girl stays with us. And the next little tidbit, I love this. As soon as they say like the girl stays here, all of the batch pulls out their guns and they point them toward the Pikes. I thought that was such good characterization. Like, character development in this episode is not that great, but characterization and the relationship between the Batch and Omega, instantly all of them pull out their guns toward the Pikes. And they say like, she goes with us. And the Pikes are just like, you don't really have a choice here. Like, we're pretty powerful. You need to get that back, and she's staying here. And Sid intervenes and says like, look, again, I told you, you don't know their power. Let me handle it. And the next thing we see is the Batch going to the ship with Sid, and they're basically saying like, I can't believe we had to leave Omega here. And Sid kind of gives like reassurance, and and being like, look, I'll get the kid back. And she says, I got her into this mess. I'll get her out. So that shows a relationship between Sid and Omega, because we've established in a few earlier episodes, I think it was before all the Ryloth stuff, is when Omega was stuck in the bar while the Batch went on a mission. And they butted heads at first, but then they had a mutual respect for each other, especially as Sid learned that Omega is amazing at strategy games and was able to gamble. Well, anyway, At the same time as she uses those quotes, it's really interesting because the camera focuses on purpose on Wrecker's facial expressions. And I love this. Like, I thought it was really well done. And I think they're going the correct direction because of all the people who love Omega, Wrecker loves that little girl. Like, he doesn't want anything, not that any of the batch want anything to happen to Omega, but like Wrecker feels remorse, but he also becomes more determined to save Omega, especially from the Pikes. I love this, but I've always, of all the things I enjoy in the Bad Batch so far, it's the relationship between Wrecker and Omega, and I'm looking forward to more expansion on it. We also learn that the bugs are called Earlings or Earlings. I think Earlings. But this is how like Tech's talking about, like, these are called Earlings. They don't like light, so we have to get there before sundown to do all this stuff. Well, what happens is they fly a ship over the nest, and it's Sid and Wrecker who go down to retrieve the canister. So I also like that Sid is getting involved, like a lot more hands-on rather than being like, yeah, take care of it. You do your thing, commandos. And they're successful in retrieving most of it. And at the same time, we see back on the ship, it's Tech and Echo being like, oh, it's Nightfall's appearing. And it's like some lines of dialogue I find very awkwardly executed, or as if the batch didn't prepare for it. Like, they're commandos and they're just not prepared. And it's just Echo just basically going like, I'm preparing for that possibility. Like, that the nest is going to expose themselves. Now, I don't know if the batch talked about their plan before going in. It's not revealed, but it makes it sound like they had no idea that Tech was preparing to make a giant flashbang. It's just like, it kind of felt like a new bit of information. I know it was toward the audience, and I know the purpose it serves. It's just really funny to think about, like, oh yeah, they had no idea this was happening. It's just like, they were hoping it gets done, but Tech is the one who prepares. But then again, Tech has not been one to make things explicit at the moment. Everyone else figures it out, and Tech is just like, oh, you just noticed that right now? It's like, ugh. That's just part of his character. So I'll let that slide. And it'll pan back to Roland and Omega being captured. Omega's looking at a gun. Roland's like, don't do it. The Pikes are really powerful. There's no point in doing this. Like, I'm just like my mom, who my mom basically said, you know, get whatever you want. She's like, isn't your mom a crime lord? He's just like, you make it sound so unsatisfying, or whatever the line was. I didn't write it down. Well, you see that Ruby gets on top of Omega. He's just like, yeah, Ruby doesn't like a lot of people. And this is where you start to see a mutual respect for Roland and Omega through Ruby. It's basically them both acknowledging that even though they're in bad circumstances, and as much as Roland is a criminal and he's a gangster, he might be a good person, especially, you know, that superstition that animals just know good people. And I think that's what it's going based off of. And I like this a lot because it shows their mutual respect. Well, it's approaching nightfall, and Echo and Tech have their little dialogue thing, and both Sid and Wrecker get the last crates, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we got them. Like, mission's gonna be complete." And as they're going up, Sid's canister, well, she bumps into one of the minecarts. The minecarts fall. Excuse me. The minecart falls, and Wrecker says, like, "Oh well, maybe they didn't hear it." And Sid's like, "I don't think we're that lucky." And all the Earlings just start flying and attacking them. And one of the funniest parts is Wrecker just freaking out and has this really high-pitched scream. So everyone's like, Wrecker, what's wrong? Because Wrecker's like the tough guy. I mean, he's afraid of heights, but apparently he's also afraid of bugs. It was hilarious. I thought that was super well done. Like, get us out of here! I can't do it. I don't even remember the line. I probably could do it, but I have to... Anyway, moving on. Well, at this point, this is when Tech is just like, all right, cool, and he throws the flashbang in and just makes a giant flash, and the Earlings all fly away from the nest. And Sid is just like, see, big guy, like, this wasn't that bad. And Wrecker's just like, bugs, 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 bugs. Like, I'm scared of bugs. Well, at the end of the episode, the spices finally return to the Pikes. And the Pikes basically say, like, yeah, well, your debt's repaid, but not Roland's. And they put Roland's head, like, they move his body on top of a crate, like, facing down as if they're about to decapitate him. And Omega's like, please don't hurt him. And Sid steps in and is like, you're right. If you kill him, it's going to start a war, and it's entirely unnecessary. And he's just like, oh, well, the Pikes were like, well, yeah, we weren't going to do that. We don't make unnecessary decisions. And they throw the knife down, and they cut off his right horn. And then they leave, and they say, like, oh, yeah, debt's repaid. And at this point, we see Omega just being like, are you okay? He's just like, I mean, like, I'm fine. And they let Roland go. And there's a dialogue between the Batch and Sid just being like, first round's on me. I don't know what the first round is. I guess it's alcohol. I don't know. Wrecker's like, oh, you owe us a lot more than that. It's like, don't push it, bud. And at the very end of the episode is a dialogue between Hunter and Omega. And Hunter basically asking her, like, why'd you stand up for him? Like, why'd you do that? She's like, I don't know. Ruby likes him. He must be a good guy. And they end the episode with them walking off. I was hoping it was alluding to more because it kind of fades to black and it takes a little while to do. And then nothing. Just the episode ends. And that's it. I thought the episode was okay. It felt like a lot of filler. Not much in terms of character development. Now, there's much in terms of character relationships. The Bad Batch with Omega, Sid with Omega, and especially Wrecker with Omega. I do appreciate the expansion of the crime syndicates and how they interact and the power dynamics. It's clear that Roland is very low tier, especially compared to the Pikes, which makes a lot of sense. The Pike Syndicate is very powerful. We've seen this since the Clone Wars, and especially since Maul allied with the crime syndicates in the Siege of Mandalore. This raises one question. A, is Maul still involved with the Pikes? Or is he still in charge of the crime syndicates? We can insinuate, like, yes, he is, especially with his appearance in Solo, since he's like the #1 dude for the crime syndicates. So that also raises the question, when's Maul going to make an appearance? Like, I'm pretty sure he's going to, because he's still alive between the end of the Clone Wars and the showdown between him and Obi-Wan in Star Wars Rebels. So I'm looking forward to that. I love Maul. Like, everyone loves Maul since his first appearance in Episode 1, but him as a character he's very fascinating, and he brings a lot to the table, especially as he has, like, mutual respect and hatred for the Emperor, and his hatred for Obi-Wan, of course. So I'm very curious, like, what's going to happen. I think this episode is going to allude to more of Season 2, if they stay involved with Sid. We'll see what happens. Maybe the end of Season 1, the Empire, like, raids Sid's cantina. Probably Crosshair. I don't know, we'll see. I've had a lot of questions since the Ryloth arc. So, overall, I don't think I need to watch this episode ever again. That being said, I'm probably going to watch The Bad Batch all over again, but reoccurring episodes, I choose the Ryloth stuff, I choose Episode 1, and I think Episode 8, where they get rid of the inhibitor chips and Rex is in it. That's one of my favorites, especially as it highlights the relationship between Wrecker and Omega. Some things I also appreciate about the episode is Omega being able to see the best in people, like, especially with Roland. Roland screwed over Sid, and it's established that Omega and Sid have mutual respect for each other, and even then she would see the best in Roland. And then also, as I said before, the relationships that Omega has with all of these other characters. I thought that was pretty well done. Like I said, I'm going to gush over this, but that scene where they say the girl stays here and they instantly pull out all of their guns. I thought that was so good. And as well as before they go back into the nest, focusing on Wrecker as Sid's giving her dialogue to the rest of the batch. So, in the meantime, again, if you enjoy this content, and if you enjoy the spoilers, and if you got all the way through, man, I thank you so much. Like that means so much to me. And I just want you to enjoy your day the geek way, of course. If you like the content, subscribe if you would like. Give it a thumbs up. I very much appreciate it. And go in the comments. What do you think of this episode? What do you think of the Bad Batch overall? If you have no idea what's going on, leave a comment saying, I don't know what's going on, but I enjoy the content. Or I don't enjoy the content, but I don't want to give you that decision. So in the meantime, again, enjoy your day the geek way, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye. Till next time.